All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Go ahead and get your questions on there, and we'll start getting them answered. So you can ask your question there on the right-hand side of the screen. So we don't have any questions out there to start with. So until then, we'll just kind of be waiting around for a question. And you can post your questions up to an hour before. So if we're, this morning we started, we started at 9 a.m. You can post your questions at 8 a.m. and those will be the first questions I start with. If you post them overnight or something like that, it's most likely we won't get to those. If you were to do that today, we would have probably done them. But since there are no questions to start out with here, but usually we do have several questions in there. So, but yeah, you can push your questions up to an hour before, and those will be the first ones I start with for the day. So yeah, just waiting for a question to be posted. If you have any questions about the Top Speed Golf System, the 20-minute distance fix, the Ball Striking Masterclass, a distance clinic that we have, any questions about, I think I mentioned 20-minute distances, unlimited swing reviews, basically anything we have on the website, welcome to ask questions about that. That's mainly what I'm here for, is to answer questions about that and any kind of oddball questions you have about golf, for sure. So yeah, go ahead and get your questions posted on there. And we'll start getting them answered. All right, so Charles B says, what is the idea behind having changeable putter weights like the Scotty Cameron? So I'm not into club fitting or anything like that, but some people prefer, kind of a heavier putter. It's more about, I think more of it is about personal preference. Some of it is about your stroke. So basically the way you can kind of think about it, like this putter here, this is what I call a slight toe hang putter. So you can see how the toe hangs just very slightly. I do have an old bullseye putter here. Let's see what this is. So this is an extreme toe hang putter. So you can see the toe hangs all the way down. I mean, that's even past 90 degrees there. So this would be good for someone who has more of a very arcing stroke. And what I mean by that is if you stand quite a bit away from the ball, so if you have more of an arcing stroke where the club kind of comes back like this and then like that, I mean, everyone's going to have a slight arc in their stroke unless they're manipulating it. But if the club comes in way back and way through like that, it's good to have a little bit more weight toward the toe. As you can see, the toe hangs, so there's more weight in the toe to allow that toe to flow through a little bit better. Whereas if you have a slight toe hang putter, one that's kind of like this, where it's a very slight toe hang, there's not as much, weight in the toe. There's some, but that's better for more of a slightly arcing stroke where it's kind of like straight back and straight through. It's literally not straight back and straight through, but it's kind of sort of like that. So so that's basically what that is. Now there are some that are completely face balanced, but yeah, I think most people are going to be benefit, and this is just my opinion. And like I said, I'm not an expert in putters or anything like that. I think most people are going to benefit from kind of a slight toe hang putter, kind of like this, because most people are going to benefit from a slightly arcing stroke. So that's a stroke where you are looking down and your eyes are just inside the golf ball, and you basically take the club back on a slight arc back and a slight arc through. I think that's what you see with most, I think, good putters. And then as far as changing the weight and putting heavier weights throughout the putter, that's just personal preference. Some people putt a little bit better with a lighter putter. Some people putt a little bit better with a heavier putter. That's basically the idea behind that. But as far as having more weight in the toe versus the heel and things like that, it's more about getting that toe through a little bit better. And a lot of times if you have a wide arcing stroke or more of an arcing stroke, it's going to be beneficial for you to usually have a little bit more weight in the toe. But yeah, a club expert would probably be able to tell you a little bit more about that. All right. So this morning's Michael L says this morning S about the 20 distance fix. Michael, did you have a question about the 20-minute distance fix or what it is or anything like that? If you would clarify a little bit there, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking this morning. This morning's about the 20 distance fix. Yes, if you have a question about it, go ahead and ask. I'll be happy to help in any way I can. If you're not sure what our 20-minute distance fix is, 20-minute distance fix is a program that we have that is specific for getting distance and basically raising your club head speed. So we've done a lot of research, trial and error. There's a lot of information out there for getting distance and things like that. And we really just boiled it down to the things that matter the most. That's what we try to do, is we try to there's so much information out there. We really try to simplify things and find the things that really matter the most, because not everyone has time to practice like a tour player, right? We don't have 8 hours a day to practice our game. So we can't be wasting our time with things that do not work. So basically what we try to do is we try to find the things that really, really matter the most, like the things in the Tatsuki golf system. These are all the 5 things that they're the most important in the golf swing. And we try to focus, on things that matter the most so that you're not wasting your time when you're practicing. You're practicing the things that are going to help your game the most. So that's what the 20-minute distance fix is. It's a program where we basically found there's 3 things that really help you to get distance. And the program in and of itself really works on those 3 things. So Michael L goes on to say, lifting the left foot to add turn to the shoulders and hips messes me up. What if I don't think about it and just turn my shoulders 90 degrees or more to the target line is good enough? So all of that's one of the pieces of getting getting more distance is increasing your range of motion. So I think a lot of people may struggle with lifting the lead heel. If basically, first of all, you want to understand the whole reason why lifting the lead heel helps. And the reason why it helps is because it helps free up the hips. It helps to increase your hip turn, which in turn helps you increase your shoulder turn overall. So basically, if you want to boil it down, if you think about your average tour player has about 120 degree total shoulder turn. So if you think about where all that comes from, the first bit of it, from 0 to 50 degrees, comes from the hips turning. So all things equal, 50 degrees is what the average hip turn is for a tour player. And then another 50 degrees comes from the separation of the hips and basically my rib cage here. And that's coming from your thoracic spine. Your upper spine has the ability to rotate, and that's what's going on there. That's all thoracic spine right there. So about 50 degrees of that is from the thoracic spine. The other 20 degrees is from the protraction and retraction of the shoulders. And if you think about that, that's basically just your shoulder blade moving away from the spine and your shoulder blade moving toward the spine. So you can keep your chest completely squared up and actually get shoulder rotation just from protracting, retracting your shoulders. So that's basically what that is. So that's 120 degrees. What we find in most people who struggle with a shoulder turn is that it usually comes from the hips. They usually are restricting the hips, or maybe they don't have the mobility in their hips that they used to, and things like that. So getting those hips to turn a little bit more is definitely going to help with that. So if you're not someone who is struggling with the hip turn and you're seeing on camera that you are getting plenty of hip turn, then the lifting the lead heel is not necessarily something that you need to do. So I see a lot of people, we tell them to lift the lead heel, but they're just lifting the lead heel to lift it. They're not lifting it to open up the hips some more. So you just have to look on camera and to see that. And one thing that you can do as you go through the program is work with a Tatsuki golf instructor, join unlimited swing reviews when spots open up, And that way I can spot that right away. I can tell right away if you are just lifting the heel to lift it, or if the hips are actually pulling the heel off the ground, which is what you want to do. So that's another thing. And another thing why sometimes things this messes people up, or kind of not necessarily messes them up, but it's a different feeling, is because you're taking a longer swing. So your sequencing is going to be a little bit different in the downswing. It may be a little bit off, and maybe a little bit to get used to. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it completely messes you up. It's just that you don't quite know how to make a swing down to the golf ball yet, or to properly sequence yet with a longer swing. And again, that's just something that comes with the more that you do it. So if you're wanting to work with yourself, not wanting to join or work with an instructor to kind of make sure things are on the right track, then what I'd recommend doing is take a look at your swing on video and see if you can tell if you're getting a similar hip turn with both of them. If you're getting the same kind of hip turn while keeping your heel on the ground, then you probably don't need to bring it off there. And as long as you're getting a big enough hip turn, then you're going to be good to go. Another thing that really helps with that hip turn, and I don't recall if Clay mentions this in the 20-minute distance fix or not, but basically that trail foot, if this trail foot is kind of squared off, it's going to be hard to rotate into my trail side. So I like to angle that out. I actually like to angle out both of my feet because I have terrible internal rotation. I'm not super flexible as far as my internal rotation goes. So I like to angle both feet out, and then like to be able to turn like that as I'm going back. So that's going to help me to really open up my hip as I'm going back. Because if my foot's squared off, I can lift this heel all I want. But if I have a stopper here, it ain't going to allow me to turn. So I've got to angle this foot out so that I can turn my hip as I'm going back. So that might be something to consider as well if you're looking at that. All right. Charles B says, where do I find the lesson that gives instruction on hitting out of higher rough, like 3 to 5 inches Kentucky Blue? We don't have any videos on that. And the reason for that is that here at Florida, especially at the course that we play at, we don't have any rough like that. So we can't really do a video like that. We don't have any Kentucky bluegrass here at all, at least as far as I know anyway. So we don't really have any videos on that. What I will say is that if you're in really, really thick rough like that, it's really going to depend on your lie. If the ball is sitting up, you're able to get the club on the golf ball fairly easily. It's really not going to be any different. The only thing I would say is I would maybe choke up on the club a little bit, use a little extra club, and maybe choke up a little bit. And the reason why you maybe want to choke up is to give you a little bit more control of the club, because you have to be more precise. If you dig in just a little bit too deep, you'll get caught in the grass. And if you don't get in there enough, you're going to thin the ball or maybe even top it. So maybe choke up on the club to give you a little bit more control. And the other thing is if you are in a situation like that where it's 3 to 5 inches of really thick rough and the ball is just kind of sitting up on top of it, you may want to kind of hover the club. It's almost like you're trying to hit it off of a tee, like the ball is teed up, like it would be with a driver. That's kind of the feeling that you want to have with it. So hovering that club kind of in the grass there instead of completely grounding it can be beneficial. And also you may want to do that as well, just for rules, because if you ground your club and that ball moves, that's a penalty, right? So hovering that club kind of above the grass there, or just on the blades of the grass instead of completely grounding it, can help you to get your bearings a little bit more, to know where you want to be. Now, if the ball is kind of buried down in there, it's going to be tough to get the club on the ball. There's a couple things that you do. One, I would choke up on the club, and also understand that depending on how far away you are from the hole, you're not likely going to be able to get this ball on the green or have much control of it, because it's just in the really, really thick kind of rough. So if it's kind of buried down in there, then what you'll want to do is, again, choke up on the club, get some loft. You want to use a lofted club to get the ball to come out. Put the ball just a little bit like a ball back in your stance. So normally, with the ball off the ground, you're going to be straight down from your lead ear. That's just a little bit ahead of the middle of your stance. Usually, if something's in the thick rough and I've got to kind of chop down into this ball, I usually play the ball probably a little bit more in the middle of my stance. And then I would try to feel like you are coming down and chopping it. So we know about the compression line on the website. The compression line is as we're coming into contact, we have our hips opening up here, and we've got our lead ankle, our lead hip, and our lead shoulder all in a straight line, slightly angled away from the target. So it would look like that basically. So if you are trying to chop down into a golf ball, you're not going to be able to be in that kind of compression line. You're going to want to be able to be, you want to be in a little bit more angled away so you can get down. The reason why you'd want to chop down on it is so they make it more likely that you get ball first contact. So you're getting a steeper angle of attack, and that's going to help you to get the ball up and out. So that's basically what it is for like extreme rough. But I mean, you've seen guys, U.S. Open especially is notorious for having, really, really deep rough. You've seen guys hit out of those things. Usually they're just kind of advancing it. They get in rough like that. They're just kind of advancing it down the fairway. So it's not always, it's not always going to be a shot where you can definitely get to the green. You just kind of have to assess your lie and do somewhere in between what I did. So I talked about the extreme where if the ball is way down in there. Then I talked about when the ball is really, really fluffed up really nicely. If it's somewhere in between there, then you're going to be doing somewhere in between what I just talked about. You may not need to chop down into it as much if the ball is kind of sitting down in there, but not so much that you have to like chop down into it. So it's just about assessing your lie. It just comes with practice and understanding what happens when you're in certain lies. But, I would try those things when you're out there and see the kind of results that you get, and then make adjustments accordingly. And if you have the opportunity to practice where you have somewhere, or if you have a course that's not really very busy or there's nobody out there, find some thick rough, throw a few balls down, and kind of test some of those things if you can, because I know a lot of ranges don't have like deep rough you can hit from. All right, so Michael L says, what helps trigger the initial move on the downswing, and what's the initial move of the downswing? So really the initial move of the downswing is the club switching directions. If you want to know the literal what that is, so what starts that is your weight shift, and that happens in the last part of the backswing. So as soon as you're basically reaching about this point in the backswing, you should have some momentum starting to go forward. And then once you get that momentum going forward and you're ready to switch directions with the club, which is what initiates the downswing, then you've got pressure in that lead foot and you're pushing into the ground and pushing into the ground and getting the body to rotate and bring everything through from the ground up. So that would be that pressure into the ground, that lateral shift, that little bit of a lateral shift in the last part of the backswing, and then the pressure into the ground, the club switching directions. That's what starts the downswing. That's what I'd recommend doing. There is a great video on the website where you can work on that. It's something that's called the step drill. That's the best drill to work on that. To find that, just search the word downswing, and if you search the word downswing in the upper right hand corner, there is a search box that says search this website. Type the word downswing, then click the word search there. There's a little box that says search. They'll get some search results there. And if you're ever looking for anything on the golf swing, that's a good place to look. But yeah, if you search downswing, it's about the third result down, I believe. It's got some yellow lettering in the thumbnail. The video is actually called How to Start the Downswing. Click that video. Clay's going to go over the step drill in that video. And I think that'll really help you out as well with the rest. If you had any other questions about the downswing and stuff like that. Michael L says, what is the stepping swing practice that Clay showed in the video is supposed to help for your... So yeah, that's just what I was talking about. What's the stepping swing practice that Clay showed in the video is supposed to help to do your downs? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking there, Michael. How are you asking, how is that going to help your downswing? It's helping your downswing because the downswing, it starts with a good weight shift and getting the pressure shifted to your lead foot. That's how you get a good downswing. A lot of people, the way that they start their downswing is that it's just the arms coming down. They get loaded up, and then the arms start coming down. There's no weight shift, and then it's really just the arms flinging in front of the body is what hits the golf ball. And that's, you can hit good golf shots doing that, absolutely, but it's not going to be the most efficient way, and it's going to be hard to get forward shaft lean and compression on the golf ball when you do that. And you have to be, it's going to become very, very timing based when you do that. So if you get a good weight shift, which starts getting your momentum to your lead side and the last part of the backswing. If you look at any tour player, go look at any tour player on YouTube, or actually download the V1 app, and they've got some swing models in there. Draw a line on their trail hip all the way from the ankle up to the trail hip, and what you're going to notice, every single tour player, you're going to see they're going to go up to the top. They're never going to cross into that line. So they never do this slide thing. Now you're going to see some long drive hitters do that, but competitive tour players, you are not going to see them do that. At least I've never seen it in a swing. But anyway, if you watch their swing, you're going to see they're never going to turn into that line. So what happens is they're turning their body. So they're loading up. So they're getting some weight moving to their trail side, but they're loading up and turning their hip back. So that's why you never see them go into that line. They're loading up and turning. And then you're going to see, as they get to the last part of the backswing, you're going to see them start to come off that line. So their momentum is starting to move forward. And then when their arms start down, now they've got pressure in that lead foot, and they can use the ground to start rotating the body open as they come into contact. So, and that's really, really important to be able to have proper swing mechanics. So that's how that step drill helps you, is it that step drill, because you are starting to step forward in the backswing, it's forcing you to get your momentum moving forward if you do the drill correctly. So that's forcing you to do that, and then it forces you to feel the pressure in your lead foot, and a lot of pressure, because you're going from zero to a ton of pressure once you put your foot down on the ground. And then from there, you can really use the ground to really rotate open and get a good weight shift to your lead side. So Boyd W says, how do I stop swing in the backswing and then lunging at the ball in the downswing? So it's you want to use your legs to rotate your body. What you're doing, if you're doing this action, it's because you're not using your legs to rotate your body back. So a good feeling to have is, I like to kind of think about if you're standing on top of a clock, right? So if I'm standing on top of a clock here, and this is 12 o'clock straight in front of me, 12 o'clock straight in front of me right here. So when I'm going back, when I'm turning, or I'm starting my backswing, instead of doing this, what I'm going to feel like is that as soon as I start that backswing, I get some momentum shifting to my lead side. As soon as I start feeling pressure in my lead foot, I am pushing down and then out away from me, and that's going to push my hip back and out of the way. And I like to feel like I'm pushing down and out toward 130. So this would be 130 on the clock over here. So it's 130 on the clock. I'm turning and pushing my hips, pushing my hip back and rotating my hip back. The other thing you may want to look at is if you are in this kind of position. I talked about this a little bit ago, but if your feet are very, very squared off, you may have a hard time rotating, and you may end up kind of sliding instead. So you may need to turn your feet out a little bit, go from this to that, to where your feet are rotated out, and that can help you to rotate your hip back. You should be able to draw a line from your hip down to your ankle and not ever cross into that line. You want to be turning your body basically on that line, and then have your weight going a little bit forward and then pushing into the ground on the other side. Now, a lot of times, if you are swaying in the backswing, that's going to lead to swaying in the downswing as well. So if you fix the swaying in the backswing, it may just well fix the swaying in the downswing, the sliding in the downswing as well. So I would take a look at that. But if it doesn't, then I would try to think about the same thing. There's going to be a little bit of a lateral shift to your lead side. So you're going to be turning, and then there's going to be a little bit of a lateral shift, and then you're going to be turning again. So I'm talking, it's like a few inches with the hips. It's not, you're not sliding and then turning. You're loading up. There's a little bit of a lateral shift, and then it's turning like that. So you're going to feel the same thing in this lead hip. Once you start to feel some good pressure into the ground here, you're going to be pushing down and then out away from you, and that's toward 10:30 on the clock, and that's going to help you to rotate that body open. And that's for a right-handed golfer. So that's what I'd be trying to feel like when you're doing that, for sure. All right. So Robert Yu says, when does lag start to release? Is 90 degree or less at the halfway down point a decent target? How is the V1 Golf app used to measure this from straight on? So it looks like you got a bunch of questions put into one here. So I'll go over them one by one. So when does the lag start to release? What you're going to see with most tour players is that it's going to start to release about when the lead arm is parallel to the ground. That's when we say that that's the max lag position. So what you're going to see is tour players are going to go up to the top. They go up to the top. They're going to have this hinge here at the top, and then they're going to start coming down. You're going to see as they shallow out the club, and as the momentum is shifting, you're going to see that angle tighten up. So you see I have this angle here, and then as I come down, that angle sharpens. And that usually sharpens about to this point right here. And then from this point, that's when it starts to release. It doesn't look like it. It kind of looks like maybe you're holding on to it, but that's not the reality of what's going on. You are generating lag, you're storing the energy, and then you're releasing it as quickly as you can. It just looks like you're here, and then you're holding it, and then you're releasing it. That's not what's going on. You're getting here, and then you're releasing it from here. It's just happening very, very slowly in the beginning of the swing. So usually, ideally, what you would have is when you start releasing that lag would be about when that lead arm is parallel to the ground, the downswing. Now, if you have a shorter swing, it might be a little bit later than that. You can store energy longer than that. You see some tour players do that. Sergio Garcia is someone who stores lag a lot longer than past where that point is. He's usually, when I looked at it, he was storing probably about to right there. And then from there, that's when that angle started getting bigger. So basically where we measure this from is that angle starts getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And then it reaches its smallest point. And then from there, it actually starts to get a little bit bigger. And that usually happens from here. Then it starts to slowly get bigger from right there and then right there. So that's basically the way that it works on there. So it may not look like it on camera, but that's what's going on there. So, and then he goes on, is 90 degree or less at the halfway down point decent target? So your average tour player is going to be about 55 degrees. So you're looking right here, 55 degrees. It's going to look something like that. That's probably about 55 degrees right there. That's pretty good target. That's tour level, right? Your average tour player. But you're going to see some tour players that are like this. They're like a 30-degree angle. And you're going to see some tour players that are more in that area that's like a 70-degree angle. I'd like you to be in that 70 to 40-degree range. I think that's really good, a good range to be in. If you're less than 90 degrees, that's fine as long as you are storing energy to this point. But most likely, you're not getting less than 90 degrees because you're coming down steep. That's most likely what's going on there, or because you're casting a little bit. So let me talk a little bit about where that angle of lag comes from. So if you just look at my grip here, if I were to angle, I'm just going to angle my wrist back as much as I can. So you can see a flat lead wrist here. I'm angling this back as much as I possibly can. I can only create about maybe a 20-degree angle there, 15-degree angle. Now, if you have really flexible wrists and you can really thumb up quite a bit, if you can really thumb up quite a bit, then you might be able to get a little bit more. But most people are only going to be able to thumb up about 15, 20 degrees. So if you have a really flexible wrist joint, you might be able to do more. So obviously 15 to 20 degrees, that's not very much, right? So that's not going to get you to a 55-degree angle. So let's talk about the other thing that gets you that appearance of lag. So that's with the shaft straight up and down, angle back. Now, if I shallow that out, look what happens to my angle. My angle tightens up. So now I've shallowed that out. My club is now shallowed out, and I've got a tighter angle. So that's the other place where that angle of lag comes from, is from that shallowing of the club. So this is not shallow. There's shallow. Now I have a much tighter angle. The last thing is momentum. So momentum is the club moving that way, and then my hand starting to move that way. My club has momentum going in that direction, and now I'm pulling in the other direction. So that sharpens the angle. So if I go like that, look at that, I can really sharpen that angle quite a bit. So if you add all those things together, you can get a super sharp angle, and that's where that comes from. So if you are not getting, if you are just barely getting 90 degrees or a little bit less than 90 degrees at that point in the swing, if you're at this point in the swing and you're in this area, you're at like 90 degrees or just a little bit less than that, most likely you're probably steep. You may also not be using the momentum of the club. You may also not be thumbing up as much as you could. So you may want to look into that and getting and working through the top speed lag course to get that working a little bit better, because you can get a little bit more power from that. And it can also, if you're struggling with flipping the club, it's going to be tough to get forward shaft lean and to be able to release this club out in front if you are kind of casting or not generating very much lag. I mean, you look at someone like JB Holmes. He has he's somewhere in this area, probably with lag, something like that, and he gets tons of forward shaft lean compression. So now he could get a little bit more speed probably if he worked on it a little bit more, but obviously he has plenty of power, so that's probably not something he really needs to work on. All right. So how is the V1 Golf app used to measure from straight on? How is it used? So you'll just set it up. I would get something like a little tripod that can hold your phone, or even something that's called the Selfie Golf. That's what I use now. It's something that's called Selfie Golf. It looks like two little like chip clips, like bag clips that are connected together, and one holds onto your phone, and then one holds onto an alignment stick. Then you just stick that alignment stick into the ground and kind of secure it to your golf bag or to something so that it doesn't wobble around. I get some students who use that, and they'll go out on a windy day and they'll have that stick kind of waving around. I feel like they're on like a cruise ship or something, hitting golf balls. It's going to be tough to see what's going on when you do that, and it might make me sick too. So, but yeah, if you want to secure that to something so that it's not, especially if it's windy out, so it's not waving around everywhere. But if you use something like that to kind of secure the camera and to hold it completely still, you can have somebody film for you, but it's just better if the camera's completely still, because you go to start drawing lines on there, and if someone's kind of shaky with the camera or kind of lackadaisical, moving around a lot, those lines aren't going to be valid, because there's going to be moving around everywhere. So if you use something like a little phone tripod, and you can get those on Amazon really, really cheap, just search phone tripod or whatever, or something like that. And you can get them for like $15, and they actually make them. They're fairly small. I used to use one for a long time until I got the Selfie Golf thing. But yeah, they're fairly small. They fit into your bag. It's got a little spring-loaded holder for your phone. It just latches onto it, and then you just start videoing it. So you download the app, and then you go to capture mode on the V1 Golf app, and then you just set it up from face on. And then when you're set up from face on, and there's a video on this on how to set up the camera, but basically you want to be perpendicular. So if I have an alignment stick down at my feet here for my target line, and I have another stick that's perpendicular to that, I want that basically right through my belly button all the way up to the camera is where I want that. And I want to be about waist level. And if you use a phone tripod or something like that, it's going to put you right at waist level. Those are usually about 3 feet high or whatever. And then same thing with the alignment sticks. The alignment sticks are typically about 4 feet long. You stick them in the ground. That's about probably 6 inches into the ground. You put that toward the top. it's going to be about the same level there. So you want to be about waist level. And then also what's really important is you want to be far away enough that you get you and the club in the frame for the entire golf swing. So you never want the club to leave the frame. Now I'm too close here because, I'm in my office here. I'm not able to back away far away enough. But basically, you want to be able to get the club. You never want the club to go out of the top of the frame, or you never want to cut off your feet. You want to have everything in the frame if at all possible. And I know you might be somewhere where, there's bays at the range or something like that, and there's someone next to you and you can't do that. Just do the best you can. But a lot of times what I do if I'm in that kind of situation is I'll actually take the mat and I'll slide it out so that I can set up the camera further away, and then I'll take a swing and then just slide the mat back in there. That's typically what I do, or I try to find one that's on the end, the bay that's on the end, so that there's nobody in front of me, and I'll use that one. Or I try to find one where there's nobody in the bay next to me, and do it there. But yeah, so there's always ways around it. You just do your best to be able to do that. But that's how you set up the camera. There's a video on the website. If you just search the word video, and you'll find the video for how to film your swing. So in the upper right-hand corner, there's a search box there. Type in the word video, click search, and there's a video. I think it's called How to Film Your Swing, or How to Video Your Swing, or something like that. It shows you how to set up the camera to do that. So that's what I recommend checking out to get more details on that. So he goes on to say, can you use something other than your fingers to draw the lines? Like on your phone? Is that what you're saying? I don't think so, unless you have a phone that can use a stylus. You can do that. But it's very, very easy to use. Actually, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but so I use my iPad most of the time because I'm doing swing reviews and stuff like that. But let me pull up so here's what a good face-on view would look like. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but you see that's Adam Scott there. That's what a good face-on view would look like. So you can see he's far away enough that the camera or the swing's never going to leave the frame. And then to draw a line on there, I'll just take my line tool, and I'll actually you just take your two fingers and you can move it around like that. I don't know if you can see that very well, but you can move it around on there, and see now I put a line on there. So if I want to measure like his compression line or whatever, I want to bring his swing down to contact. If I want to measure his compression line, what I do is I just take a line, my finger, I'll put one on his ankle and one on his shoulder socket, and you can see there I'm measuring his compression line. You can see his compression line is pretty good, slightly angled away from the target, and everything's nice in line there. So that's how you do it. If you do it like that, it's going to be a little bit tougher. But if you use both fingers like that, then it's very, very easy. And you can also create an angle. So if you want to create an angle, let's say I wanted to create an angle from this down to his knee cap. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but let's say you want to do that. You take another line and go near the vertex and then go toward his knee, and you can see I got 14 degrees. I don't know if you can see where it says there, but it says 14 degrees right there. But you can see I've got a little angle on there. So if I think it's just hard to see on the bright. So you see if I have an angle there, and then if I draw that there, I think you can, and it's just hard to see. There you go. Now you can kind of see if I turn it that way, you can see how I created an angle there. 13 degrees is what that angle is, or 31 degrees, sorry. I was reading it backwards on there. So that's how you draw an angle on there, or a line. It's very, very easy. So he says, I know we should be at 180 degrees at a point 45 degrees out front, but is it the best way to try and delay this to gain club head speed? So you're asking how would you measure this from straight on? Okay, so that's a good question. I see what you're asking now. So if I have my app here, so if you look, Adam Scott is not someone who has a ton of lag, and that's fine. He's going to be a little bit. So if you watch here, it's a little bit hard to see. I'm trying to angle this so you all can see it better. So if you watch as he's coming down, you can't really see his club, unfortunately. But let me see if I can find one that's a little bit easier, just so we can see it. See if you can see this one. So this is Brooks Koepka. So if I get him moving, maybe. Well, there we go. So you see he's sharpening this angle. So you can see there he has sharpened up that angle. You can kind of barely see that. You see how he sharpened up that angle between his lead arm and the shaft? That's how I would measure it there. So I would take a line and I would put it right there. And then I'd take another line at the vertex there and I'd put it about right there. So you can see he's got, it's a little bit hard to see, but you can see he's got 44 degrees of lag. That's basically where that angle is sharpest. And you'll see here as he goes, well, I'll just go a few frames forward. You can see that angle has actually gotten a little bit bigger. It's a little bit hard to see, but if I went 2 frames forward and I will measure it from there, 61. I went 2 frames forward and he's at 61 degrees. So you can see how that angle has increased a little bit as he's gone forward. So that's how you would measure it on there. Create the angles and do it on there. But you want to make sure that you are generating lag. That angle is getting sharper to that lead arm around this area here. If it's only getting sharper to here and then it's getting bigger, then you're casting a little bit. Or you're just not generating lag. You don't want to work through the top speed lag course to get through there. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, you want to be straight face on, and then you'll be able to. You want to look from face on, draw the angles on there of your max lag position. See where that angle becomes the sharpest in the downswing. If that angle is not getting sharper at all in the downswing, that means that you're casting. So you'll want to work through the top speed lag course. So Robert Hughes says, it'd be nice for you guys to demonstrate drawing the lines in the V1 Golf app so we are observing correctly. Sure, I think that's a great idea. That might be something that we do in the future. So, and then he goes on to say, your demo there looks like a hands high full turn, then dropping, tupping elbow to shallow. Yep, that's exactly what you got to do. So in order to get that, to get the club to shallow, the elbow does need to come in. Unless you have crazy flexible wrists, which I do not. I can't bend my wrists. This is probably a pretty normal wrist extension there. It's pretty normal wrist extension. That's about a 60-degree angle that I can create. Some people can go back 90 degrees, do crazy things. If you can do that, then you may be able to get your elbow kind of out away from your body. But I can't. I've got to get my elbow into my body to get the shallow out. If I'm out here, that club's coming out steep. All right, so we got about 15 minutes left. If you have any more questions, what I'm going to try to do, and I have to test it first because I don't want to do it and it not actually work. But I'm going to try to get like a projector screen down here. I have a projector, a pretty good projector that's very bright that I can use, and I might be able to show you this kind of stuff to be able to do that. So it'd be a little bit easier. So yeah, if we got any more questions, go ahead and post them on there. We got about 15 minutes left, and then we'll call it a day from there. But yeah. So any questions about anything else, just let me know. All right. So Lawrence has got a question here. Says I won a club tournament yesterday. Using things I am learning at TSG, it all becomes a bit too technical for me, but it all makes sense, perfect sense. Thanks to everyone for their input. Keep up the good work, Lawrence. Thanks for the um, kind words there. Happy to hear you were able to win a tournament. Yeah, it is definitely on the technical side. So if you're kind of a touchy feely kind of player, which a lot of people are, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You got to have a good mix of both kind of the ball striking aspect of it, because your technique can only take you so far, and that's why we have the ball striking masterclass. So your technique can only take you so far. You can have absolutely perfect technique, do everything perfectly correctly, and you can hit a terrible golf shot. So you can have a perfect spine angle throughout the entire swing. You can have a perfect shoulder turn. You can be generating tons of lag, and you can be doing all these things. But if you don't hit the ball in the center of the club face, if you don't hit the ball with a square club face, if you're not swinging on plane, if you are not hitting the ball before the ground, if you're not doing those things, or if hitting the ball with any kind of speed, if you're not doing any of those things, then you're not going to hit the ball very well, right? If you're not just doing one of those things, you're not going to hit the ball very well. So that you now you can have terrible technique, you can have terrible spine angle, and all of those things. But if you line up all those things I just talked about, then you're going to hit a good golf shot. That's why you can see people all the time with terrible golf swings, high handicap player, that everything just comes together and they get all those things at contact correct, and then they hit a good one. So now the thing is that if you don't have good technique, it's just harder to be in those positions more consistently. So that's what the technique does for you. So you got to have a good mix of working on your technique and also working on your ball striking. So Robert Yu says, did you fill the remaining spots for your swing reviews? Yep, I'm actually all full right now. So hopefully in the next month or two, things can clear up as we're kind of moving things around here, and I'll be able to take on some more students. So be on the lookout in your email in the next few months for opportunities to sign up again. If you are interested in my swing reviews, join my waiting list because those people, whenever we open up spots again, those people are going to be notified first and have first dibs on those spots. So if you join the waiting list, that's going to put you on the list of people that's going to get an email first letting you know that spot's available. So highly recommend doing that if you are at all interested, so you can have a first dibs, because it's possible we may send it out to the waiting list and they may fill it out completely, and other people, if you're not on the waiting list, may not have any chance of even signing up. So I recommend doing that for sure. So if you have any questions about that, just let me know. But you can click on the Get a Review at the top of the page. That will take you to the swing review page, and you'll be able to see the where you can sign up for the waiting list right there. So Robert B says, "Hey Q, what's Clay's tilt the club drill in the bonus course early extension? I don't think he described it." I'm not sure exactly what that is, Robert. I'm sorry there. The tilt the club might be for staying in your shoulder tilt. I'm not sure 100% what drill that is, but I would imagine it has to do with because if you're wanting to not have early extension, you're trying to stay in your posture, right? So you're trying to go from not standing up to tilting the club down. So that might be what's going on. If that drill is not very good, then that drill, he doesn't really do anything in there, and I'll have to check that out. But there's another great drill for that. It's called the shoulder to shoulder drill. That might be basically what it is. If you search the website, just search shoulder to shoulder, you'll find that drill. I think that would be really, really good. So if you go in the upper right-hand corner, just search the words shoulder to shoulder, and you'll find that drill. It's really good for staying in your posture and getting ready to early extension for sure. So Dennis G says, can you discuss hand and arm rotation post impact? Sure. So after impact, basically what's happening is your hands are continuing to roll over. So if we're looking at contact here, so if we're coming into contact, I'm right here. You have square club face, forward shaft lean, all that looks good. My trail hand's kind of in a back position. My lead wrist is in a flat or slightly bowed position. And you're going to see as I come through contact, and some people will have a little bit more of a squared release, and that's completely fine. Some people will roll the face over a little bit more. Typically, what you're going to see is when you're in that straight line release position, where that club is kind of splitting the forearms, and that's about 45 degrees out in front. Typically, that club face is going to be rotated over about 45 degrees. So from here, it's rotated over about 45 degrees. And your trail hand is rolling over your lead hand. So if you have more of a squared release, your trail hand is not rolling over the lead hand as much. And if you have more of a rolled release, then your trail hand is getting over top of your lead hand a lot more. So it's just personal preference there, and really there's benefits to both, and cons to both, right? So if you have more of a rolled release, what's happening is the face is coming over and it's rolling over faster through impact. So what that can do is that can give you some more speed because the toe of the club is moving faster than the heel. So if you are rotating this club through faster, it gives you a little bit of extra speed. So there's actually a great video on the website where Clay talks about a rolled release versus a square release. So if you look at somebody who has a rolled release, that's someone like Rory McIlroy, who's rolling his hands through impact quite a bit. If you look at someone like Jordan Spieth, he kind of keeps his face square a lot longer through impact. So the negative to rolling the hands over is that there's a little bit more timing there. You have to time this squaring of the club face a little bit more, and it may be a little bit more difficult to control your face at impact in the direction the face is pointing, but you're going to get more speed. Now, if you have more of a squared release where the face is staying square longer through the impact zone, you're not going to get as much speed from that, but you're going to be able to get maybe a little bit squarer of a face. Maybe you're going to be a little bit more consistent with where you're striking or where the ball is starting. So it really just depends on what it's personal preference and what works best for you. You got to find that happy medium of getting the most amount of speed and being able to have the face squaring up at contact as well. So that's what you'll want to look at when you're thinking about that. But if you want to check out that video, it's a great video. Just search the word rolled and you should be able to find it, or search the word rolled release. You should be able to find where that video where Clay talks about. In the thumbnail of the video, you'll see it's a side-by-side of Jordan Spieth and Rory McIlroy. I'm just trying to think photographic memory when I'm seeing there. That's the video that I'm talking about. So Don P says, someone told me I should try playing around hitting at 50% speed and would improve my tempo. It's hard to say without seeing your swing, but I don't know. I'm not a big fan of people saying to swing softer or things like that. Most of the time, poor tempo is coming from a short swing. So what I would tell you is if I see that you're swinging quick, you're swinging too quick, your tempo is way too quick, it's most likely because you're swinging too short. You probably need to improve your shoulder turn. So I would look at on camera and make sure that you're getting a full shoulder turn. And because a lot of times what happens is when you'll see people with a short turn and then they'll swing really, really quick in the downswing because they feel like they've got to really put in 100% effort from the top of the swing to be able to get any kind of club head speed. And they kind of do in order for that to happen. So if you get a longer swing, get a nice big shoulder turn, now you feel like you have all the time in the world to be able to get that club to accelerate into impact, and you can come through with a lot better tempo, and you can still swing hard, but it won't look like it because you have a longer swing. Look at guys like Freddie Couples, Ernie Els, right? These are guys that look like they have the smoothest golf swings. They're swinging hard, but they get big shoulder turns. They have big shoulder turn. They have a lot of space and time to accelerate the club. Look at Freddie Couples' hands at the top of the swing. They're over top of his head. They're way up here. That's how he's able to look so smooth, is because he creates a lot of space, and he doesn't have to rush the downswing. He can allow everything to fall into place and be able to get a lot more club head speed doing that. So yeah, I would definitely look at and make sure that you're getting a full shoulder turn. And if you're not, I would go work through our power turn course in the Tatsuki Golf system to really ingrain that good shoulder turn. So Michael L says, how critical is it to try to keep your arms close together and also close to the chest throughout impact? Also, how important is it to keep your head stay still through impact? So basically, if you're talking about throughout the swing, it's not that critical. You want to be able to get the arms kind of away from each other, not necessarily try to get them away from each other, but if it's restricting your range of motion to try to keep your arms close together, then I would feel disconnected at the top. That's completely fine. But at contact, you do need to be connected. You can't come into contact like this. Otherwise, it's typically going to be flipping the club or things like that. So typically at contact, you want to be in kind of this kind of position. Your trail arm is going to be kind of bent and into your side a little bit. And then your lead arm is going to be mostly straight. It can have a little bit of bend in it. That's fine. But it's going to be mostly straight. And you're going to have it basically across your chest here, across the front of your chest. It's going to be pressed up against the front of your chest here. And then your trail arm is going to be right on your side. And that is important to be in a good impact position. So if you're not in that kind of position, if you're coming in and your elbow is kind of out away from your body, your trail elbow here, it most likely means that you're coming over the top. If your lead arm is kind of coming out away from your body and you're coming in this position, that most likely means that you're flipping and you're swinging all arms basically, because the way that you get in this kind of position through impact is from stopping your body from rotating. So you got to keep your body rotating so that you can be in this kind of position. If you watch, if I rotate, I'm here. If I don't rotate, I'm here. So you got to allow the body to rotate. So that is very, very critical. And then as far as the head staying, so typically what you're going to see, a lot of people think that the head does not move in the golf swing. That couldn't be further from the truth. It does move some, as much as 6 inches or things like that from address. So basically what you're going to see with most tour players is at address to the top of the swing, typically what you'll see is their head will just get a little bit lower, 2 or 3 inches lower, and it might just move a little bit toward the trail side. Some players, it moves just a little bit toward the trail side, but most of the time it just moves a little bit lower. And then in the downswing, it actually starts to move even lower and then a little bit forward as they're coming down about to waist level. They'll get about right here, and then the head stays pretty stationary from this point to contact. They'll get here, and then it stays pretty much still all the way from here to contact. Now, some players you'll see, they'll come from here to contact, and you'll see it just raise up slightly, like an inch. Not very much typically. Rory McIlroy is someone you'll see it will raise up just a little bit as they're coming into contact, and that's completely fine as long as you are in a good impact position, because he's getting down really, really low, much lower than most people do, and then he raises up just a little bit. So that's completely fine. And then from there, you'll see the head kind of stays there until they get about the straight line release. And then after that, you'll see the head come all the way up into a full finish. So there is actually a great video on head movement on the website if you want to check that out. If you go to the Crazy Detail Vault, you'll be able to find that. As far as how critical that is, I would say it is critical, but it is a product of having good swing mechanics like we talk about in the Tatsuki Golf system. If you have a stable fluid spine throughout the swing and you're doing all these things that we talk about in the Tatsuki Golf system, your head is going to not be all over the place. If you're going to have some movement, which is fine, it doesn't need to stay like on a swivel throughout the entire swing. I shouldn't be able to draw a dot on your nose and then it just stays right there throughout the swing. That's not what happens. It does move some, and it is critical that it moves down. If it moves up at all, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be flipping for sure. So if you look at your swing, look from face on, you draw a line on the top of your head, and you see in the beginning of the swing or at the top of the swing that you're getting above that line at any point in the swing. That means that you're kind of raising up out of your posture a little bit, and there's going to be some issues that happen because of that. Usually it's flipping, releasing the club early, coming down steep, and things like that. So working on the move, working on stop relay extension section are a good way, some good ways to help combat that for sure. So thanks everybody for joining me. I'll be back here Monday afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern time. We'll go ahead and wrap it up right there, and I will talk to you all next time. Thanks.